is another edition of the Narcotic Casserole Daily Dish Review. This time we're going to be talking about the first 4 episodes of Season 10 of Doctor Who. I have been rabid for this show to come back. For those who do not know me, which is, you're the internet, so it's a lot of you, Doctor Who has kind of been the foundation for pretty much everything I've ever loved in fandom. It's pretty much my religion in many respects. I stumbled on it when the TV movie aired in 1996, and from there I started going back, watching all the classic series, going and all the way from Hartnell onward. So when the show came back in 2005, I felt like I got my best friend back. And I've never stopped loving it in all of its form, in all of its iterations. So I'm going to warn you about this. You're probably going to get a lot of positive reviews from me regarding Doctor Who because I've seen so many variations of the show and so many ways it's been spun, so many ways that they've gone around the different avenues of it, and I've loved practically every single one of them. Matter of fact, somewhere down the line, keep your eye here, I'm probably going to do a top 10 list of the Doctor Who episodes I actually do think are actually bad. Doctor Who, to me, has never, in its, it's getting on to be getting close to 54 years. It has not, in any shape, way, or form, betrayed the fundamentals of what it is. And the fundamentals are as follows. Very simple, and in all that time it has never, and cynics are going to disagree, but this show has never faltered from that. Even the TV movie, which did silly things like trying to make the Doctor half human, even they stuck to its guns in the end. And if you ever go back and look back on that, that's a whole crazy history right there. One of the great things about this season opener, the pilot as it's called, very appropriately and also very ironically, the great thing about this episode is that it follows many of the story beats of the debut episode of the 2005 series, Rose, where it all follows from the point of view of the companion character. And that's always a great tactic to use to initiate new people who are unfamiliar. Put them into the shoes of someone who themselves is equally unfamiliar, but ultimately very relatable. Now, I'm going to say this in the beginning. When they, very shortly after season 9 ended, they did a reveal. Actually, no, sometime after the Christmas special, they did a reveal to reveal Bill for the first time. Now, it didn't show us much of what she was like, except that Pearl Mackie was playing her, and she was very sassy. And actually, one of the things, which, as I'm going to get into in these reviews, she asks a lot of questions that normally companions never ask, and it's actually kind of cool for that regards. I think my main worry, and I still maintain, I think I wish they would do this in later seasons with later companions. I would like a companion from another time period, like maybe bring in a character, like when Clara was going to join, when we met her in the Snowmen, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had a character from Victorian England coming in, because we would have outsiders' point of view coming to our time and being astonished by what they see, or even an alien. The one thing I really enjoyed in Voyage of the Damned was Astrid, when they took her down to Earth and she was just blown away by what she saw. And to us, we've seen all this, it's boring. But when an alien comes to our planet and just goes, wow, I would like to have a full-fledged companion, like one that's actually going to stick around. I would like to see that. So I admit a bit of early chagrin when I saw that it was, yes, it's going to be another Earthling, and it's going to be from our time again. I would one day like it. I mean, it's been 10 seasons. We are perfectly within our comfort zone that we can... I mean, there's a lot of things, and this is why I got to praise Stephen Moffat. Moffat has always tried to endeavor to kind of nudge us a little out of the comfort zone so we can have new stuff. And he's never faltered on that. I mean, for a lot of the new series fans who were used to younger doctors, he hit them over the head with an older doctor. For all of us who are used to the idea of a male master, hit us on the head with Missy, and she's awesome, and I love her. So, in the future, I'd like to see some new changes like that. But that being said, in the pilot episode, the pilot, Bill is I once you really got the gist of her, you really enjoy her. First off, the main thing I absolutely enjoy about her is she asks the unusual questions. She asks the ones that are like, oh yeah, I never stopped to actually think about that. Even the doctor goes, oh yeah, they never really ask about the bathrooms. That's just something that's just innate, where they just seem to find the bathroom. And it's cool that Bill is the companion who asks that. Now that being said, we do have something of an alien companion in the series with Nardal, who was established in the Husbands of River Song, and who was upgraded to a full-fledged companion in Return of Dr. Mysterio. But in a fashion, he seems more at this point in the first 4 episodes, he seems more of a tool. We really haven't. Granted, in Dr. Mysterio, it showed that he actually was a wonderful companion. But as it is in the season, he seems more of a tool in this case. A tool with a very great personality and fun. And one thing I like, and actually this goes out to Bill too, I like that Moffat seems to want to have companions who are going to challenge the Doctor for a change. Because most relationships with the Doctor tend to be somewhat proactive. They tend to be a little bit more, yeah, let's do this. Never stopping to really question things until things get really bad. Now, we had a couple episodes where Clara did that, but one could say that they didn't really come off the way they should. Bill, on the other hand, because she's still new and because she's still fresh, and the fact that she's coming forward and asking these like now, right off the bat, it's refreshing because you get the vibe. Even in all these 4 episodes, she's still feeling it out. Now, I've been talking about the first 4 episodes. Let's focus on the singular. In the pilot, Bill is a girl who just serves chips at the cantina at a local university, and periodically she sneaks in and watches the Doctor's lectures. Now, why the Doctor has been spending a substantial amount of time in this university just doing lectures, no one knows. But the Doctor notices her because Bill actually seems to be receptive to everything he's talking about. And he takes a shine to her because she's open-minded to these things. Now, this leads to a bit of a conflict because the Doctor has, and it seems in this beginning, a self-imposed exile. Why, we don't know. All we know is that it involves around a mysterious vault. We see this vault, and we think it has something to do with what's going on with Bill and this mysterious puddle and this girl named Heather with the starry eye. I just got that. But as it turns out, no, that's actually the beginning of the story arc in this season, and it's a great kick to the story arc. And they revisit it in every episode, but it doesn't feel as obnoxious as, say, Torchwood, the constant mentioning of Torchwood in season 2. That got a little obnoxious. This time, though, everything seems to go back to this vault in the sub-basement of the university. And we're intrigued, but it never distracts us from what's really going on. Now, this first episode, in a fashion, Rose, you could consider to be a minimalistic debut episode because the threat was very simple. It was just shop window dummies looking to take over the world, and they're even resolved in a very simplistic way with a tube of anti-plastic. Tubus ex machina. Whereas in this case, it's a very simple thing, but yet, oddly enough, and this is, I guess I could say I'm a bit of a man whore for Moffat, but his writing, he seems to bring out a bit more ways to kind of let the thread kind of echo what's going on in the character's head at the present time. Now, it's a very simple threat. It's visually interesting, and in many ways, it's heartbreaking, particularly when you find out the truth about it. And I like that it doesn't pull those kind of emotional punches. And even in the midst of this, and it's a very simple story, even in the midst of this, we're still getting Daleks, and even a surprise return of the Movellans, though I find it odd that even in a battle scene they're screaming, which they're robots, so how do robots scream? How is that? So this episode's more focused on cultivating Bill as a character, even kind of building up her sense of wanderlust. And all the scenes where they count are excellent. And the one thing I gotta say I did like about this one, Now, most of the time the Doctor's ever been timid to bring someone on board, it's because he never wants to feel the hurt of losing them. In this case, I love the fact that his reluctance has to do with the fact that he has an obligation and he can't have distractions. That I found extremely interesting. And once again, leads to wonderful possibilities for the season to come. So, I guess you could say, as a season opener, it works. Now, I'd say it didn't. I wouldn't say I was like invigorated. Like personally, like The Magician's Apprentice was an amazing season opener. Like, what was he? What would be another great one? Personally, I thoroughly. The 11th Hour is probably one of the best season premieres the show ever had, and even The Impossible Astronaut also. Stuff like that. That was a kicker. This one took its time. It was a bit more subtle. Moved at a much more deliberate, more I guess breathy would be the word. It just moved at a pace that was a bit more of its own, focusing on a much more loose story. So with that, I'm going to give the pilot 3.5 helpings. So we're moving on to the next episode, Smile. Smile was written by Frank Cottrell Boyce, who wrote the kind of oddly weird In the Forest of the Night from season 8. The one with the trees. I mean, it was definitely a filler episode, and I'd say the reason I enjoy watching that one is of Capaldi's interaction with all the kids. It's always fun seeing the Doctor interact with, especially Capaldi's Doctor. One of my favorite things about him is the way he interacts. On one side, he'll interact with adults, and he just has nothing but contempt. He talks to kids, and he seems to treat them more respectfully than he does the adults, which is hilarious. But off topic. He wrote Smile this time around, and I gotta say, for a sophomore effort from this writer for this show, much better. Much better. This one I really liked for the fact that it actually had a very old school feel to it, particularly because it reminded me very heavily of a severely underrated episode from the 7th Doctor era, The Happiness Patrol, which has a same underlying premise, a same underlying threat, where if you're not happy, you die. But this one is a bit more direct, and it's not, but the thing that makes this one different compared to that one, where that one had a much more of a political slant, a much more satirical slant, this one takes it to a much more horror themed level. It's definitely less about the government, and it's just more about human nature and actually kind of the interesting concept of, are emotions virulent? Because this one, you discover that the whole thing starts because one person experienced grief for the first time, and because that person experienced grief, it created this morbid domino effect. So that alone just charged me for this episode. It was such an interesting concept, and it actually kind of underlying themes that were talked about in Inception, of the concept of an idea being a virus that consumes your mind, and even down to the revelation that the Vardy are they themselves alive, and that they themselves have ideas that end up becoming something worse. It's a killer robot episode, and it's a very well executed one, and it even has it does a nice job jabbing at our modern day desire to communicate with emojis, which I try my best to avoid that. So, Smile, it's actually a very direct episode, which was definitely nice to see. Bill has some great moments in this one. I'd say if there's an episode that's going to sell you on her as a companion, and sometimes really the best way to see how a companion is going to be is to see them in their first real trip in the TARDIS. Like, personally, I really enjoyed Clara. Well, I really got to like Clara because of the Rings of Akatan. And this one, for Bill, excellent job on this one. Actually, the thing I really liked about her was how eager she was to throw herself into the fray. And you gotta love a companion who's willing to face, know full well it's dangerous, but I love the fact she's willing to throw herself in anyway because of her curiosity. And even to an extent her, I guess altruism would be the word to describe it. Altruism? Her eagerness to help. That. So in closing with Smile, I'm going to give that one 4 helpings. The next episode, this may very well be probably not just my favorite of this, one of my favorites of the season. We don't know that yet, but it's definitely one of my top 5 of the Capaldi era, and probably, potentially, even one of my favorites of the new series, Thin Ice, which was also written by a returning writer. Sarah Dollard is her name, and she wrote the fake out departure episode for Clara, Face the Raven. The episode we thought was going to be her departure episode, but then it turned out no, it's not. It's just the prologue to all that. She was great, and I was so happy Stephen Moffat brought her back. Not to mention the fact it's just cool that we get some more female representation from writers in Doctor Who, and because they have a particularly interesting voice in their own regards. I want her to keep coming back. Thin Ice. First off, I love historicals as much as everything, as much as particularly a lot of the people of the early Doctor Who, mainly because it's always fun seeing people from our time's reaction to the past. It's always great. But this one in particular, I really loved. First and foremost, because I never knew about the Frost Fairs, and I looked it up, and this was a thing, and I was like, this is a whole part, and even it was even alluded to in a previous episode of Doctor Who in A Good Man Goes to War, but this episode showed it to us flat out, and the production work on this is outstanding. I mean, it is seamless. I mean, because I know there's parts that are done in studio, but there are parts that are also done on location. It is gorgeously executed. It even had some, even feelings wise, I felt echoes of great episodes like The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, amongst others. Even an air of Ghostlight, which was interesting. And yes, there was comparisons made to The Beast Below, which yes, I agree with that. But the real reason this episode is great is that this is, for Bill, I'd say this was the episode that really helped to define what the dynamic was going to be between Bill and the Doctor. I loved how Bill flat out confronted him on some of the basically hard things that we've just been so used to seeing the Doctor do. And the odd thing is, it's weird. We've seemed to have gotten a bit complacent in the way we see this show. For the longest time, yeah, we've seen people die, and we've seen the Doctor react to it, and we've even to an extent seen the companions kind of brush it off because they're used to it. But in the case of Bill here, which was incredible. Now, even she said, it was different seeing just bones because they were just bones. But I just watched a child die, and I love the fact that I'm seeing a companion. I actually, to my recollection, I mean, granted, Donna had some great reactions to seeing people die, I wouldn't say great reactions, but natural reactions. But it's not often that you have a companion that, especially so early on out of the gate, will actually go, all right, I just saw someone die, and the man I'm with, who's basically my chauffeur, he's treating it like it's just any other day, and it's kind of scaring me a bit. Bill's reactions in this episode are so natural and so relatable, and frankly, should in any viewer, not just fans, but just any viewer, should be questioning in their own self. If in the event you ever saw someone die, how do you react? This episode delved into it, and there were some good, solid emotional moments in this one. But that being said, there was wonderful bits of humor in it as well. Of course, everyone is talking about the hit heard around the cosmos when the Doctor punched a freaking jackass villain who's a racist, bastard, asshole. And justifiably so too. And of course, the build-up to it was par excellence. It was great. I think the reason why this episode shines for me is it has some of the best Doctor-companion character building dynamic that I've seen in a long time. And the fact they're doing it still really early on is great. So with that one, with that in mind, I can't even think of any caveats with this episode. This is one I might even just start watching after I'm done recording here. This one, I'm going to give a perfect score of 5 helpings. 5 helpings. That's my first 5 helpings. Episode 4, Knock Knock. It's weird. This one has a first-time writer, Mike Bartlett, and for a first effort, this is top-notch. In many respects, I really enjoyed this episode because it was showing. It actually, a strong focus on this was on Bill in her natural world. You're seeing Bill with her friends. You're seeing her just trying to get by. It was kind of when they say the term down to earth, this is a very accurate term for down to earth. And with that end, it succeeds. That being said, this is one of those times where I wished this season would have more two-parters. Season 9 may very well be one of my favorite seasons because practically every episode, with the exception of Sleep No More, were two-parters, or even three-parters. I consider Face the Raven to Heaven Sent and Hellbent, I consider that a three-parter. I love that because it had a wonderful old-school feel because the classic series was all about those cliffhangers. I would like it if we had more of that, and I get the feeling that Knock Knock may have functioned even better as a two-parter, because I feel like these are some solid ideas which, with given more time for the story to breathe, would be lent a lot more gravitas. What's there is great, and I will say there were times where, I mean, granted, this one also kind of pulls the everyone lives angle, which is understandable. I kind of would, I think for probably what's going to come in the season later on, it's appropriate. At the same time, though, it did rob a lot of the spontaneity of who's going to live and who's going to die. Like, characters' names escape me now, but there was one of the kids who actually accompanies the doctor when he's finding out stuff, and he dies on the stairway, or at least dies on the stairway. And I was genuinely affected because I thought, man, this character actually, I really enjoyed him. I thought he actually would have made a great, like, kind of recurring, wouldn't say maybe a Rory level, but maybe an early Mickey level, possibly. It would have been cool. It would have been cool to have that. But because they all live in the end, we may get that later on, but because he lives later on, it kind of robbed that sense of spontaneity. Like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, he died. But so I'd say also first viewing, it was a strong experience, but I rewatched this episode prior to this review, and I realized that a lot of that, it did kind of rob the threat of any kind of gravitas. And I would even say, with the final revelation about the landlord and his daughter / mother, you'll, if you haven't seen the episode, you'll get it. I may have spoiled it already. Why are you watching this review? Why are you watching this review before seeing it? Shame on you. It doesn't stand up to repeat viewings. I've discovered this. It does not. All the other, the first three definitely do. This one does not. And I think with that, I may have to give the overall this final episode maybe. I would have to give this one maybe. If I'm being a jerk, I'm going to have to say 2.5 helpings, but maybe I'll be nice and say 3 helpings. But basically, it was a pretty average affair, but it was not the fault of the writer. The writer did a fine job, but I feel like maybe they could have evolved these ideas a bit more, and maybe if they had more room to breathe, like make this a 2-parter, possibly this could have actually had a bit more. They probably could have lent room to the idea that these characters could have potentially died. It would have been fine. I think this was one of the rare times where an everyone lives scenario, maybe not the best course of action. This is probably the weak link in the chain. This is after constant reflection. I'm still going to keep watching this episode, and in the grand scheme, when I finally do my list of the genuinely worst episodes, this will not be on it. Trust me, those spots will be reserved for ones that pretty much everyone will agree were the most rubbish of the bunch. So, that is my review of the first 4 episodes of the season. Overall, I'm absolutely stoked. I'm glad it's back. I'd say my only sadness really is that this is Capaldi's last season, because honestly, and I had to really reflect on this, Capaldi is probably turning into, for the new series, he's probably turning into the Doctor I'm going to just keep watching the most, because he has so many ranges, so many moods, so many levels. Tennant, I loved him initially. After a while, upon reflection, he seemed to deal in extremes. Eccleston, I loved him constantly, and I'll always revisit him, but he didn't get a lot of time to really do some amazing things. He only had like 1 season. Matt Smith, I still enjoy, and I'll always love him because he started bringing the alienness back to the Doctor. This wonderful alien eccentricity, he really brought that out, and I think that's why I think he was dynamically one of the most interesting Doctors. But Capaldi takes that notion, brings it further. I like that you're never 100% sure about him. Sometimes he can be very hostile, but sometimes he can be just joyous and joie de vivre. He can be hilarious, he can be funny, he can be innocent, but he can be scary. He has probably some of the most dynamic, and I'd say that's probably the best word. In the grand scheme, he's the most dynamic Doctor I've seen in a long time. I'd say actually since Sylvester McCoy. And if you subscribe to the Take 5 theory, I would say that's a pretty accurate summation. Not just the Scottish, but the fact that McCoy was able to go from being very whimsical to times very dark and very sinister. And I think Capaldi has handled that angle wonderfully. And I admit, and I have absolute faith that his send-off is going to be wonderful because Matt Smith, say what you will about Time with the Doctor, his final scene is probably one of the best final scenes a Doctor could ever have. And with that, with Capaldi, I'm going to be very sad to see him go. Season 10 has been probably what I'm going to want out of a send-off season for a, frankly, amazing Doctor. So, overall, thus far, I'm going to give the first 4 episodes of Doctor Who Season 10 a 4 out of 5 helpings. Well, keep your eyes here on Narcotic Casserole. I'm going to come back again for the next 4 episodes, starting with Oxygen and then moving onwards. So, with all that said, keep your eye on Narcotic Casserole for more content. If you like what you see here, like, share, subscribe, comments on below on what you think of Bill, think of the new season, and also what you think is and of course the big question, what's in the vault? We don't know. Or maybe we do. I don't know. Maybe the answer is right in front of us and we don't know it, but that's what we shall see. But keep your eye on here for more content. We're going to have more episodes of Close Examinations, and if you haven't seen it yet, go back and see my Close Examinations of some of the Companions debut episodes, and also a couple more upcoming. We'll also have a new edition of the Cinema Schlock Society and the upcoming feature, The Cinema Doctor. I'm John. This is Narcotic Casserole Productions, and I'll see you next time.